The Olmec civilization emerged in the swampy lowlands of Mexico's Gulf Coast around 1500 and disappeared by 400 long before the Common Era, leaving behind some of the most enigmatic artifacts in the Americas. They carved colossal stone heads weighing up to 50 tons, transported from quarries 60 miles away through jungle and swamp. They built the first pyramids in Mesoamerica, developed early writing systems, invented the concept of zero centuries before it appeared in the Old World, and established trade networks extending over 1,000 miles. The Maya, Aztecs, and every Mesoamerican civilization that followed borrowed from Olmec innovations, the 260-day ritual calendar, the ballgame, bloodletting rituals, and jaguar symbolism all originated here. Yet we don't know what they called themselves, what language they spoke, or why their cities were deliberately destroyed and abandoned. Today we're diving deep into archaeology's mother culture, from the colossal heads everyone recognizes, down to recent discoveries and finally into the abyss of mysteries that scholars still can't explain. 17 colossal heads have been discovered, each carved from single basalt boulders weighing 6 to 50 tons. The largest stands 11.5 feet tall and weighs approximately 50 tons. These heads were carved between 1500 to 400 BCE at San Lorenzo, Venta, Tres Zapotes, and Cabata. Each head is completely unique with different facial features, helmet designs, and ear ornaments, suggesting they are portraits of specific rulers. The detail is extraordinary. Individual teeth, wrinkles around eyes, varied nose shapes, and lip thickness. The basalt came from the Tuxtla Mountains, 60 to 90 miles away. Moving Monument 1 would have required approximately 1,500 people pulling on rope systems, using wooden rollers through swamps and rivers. Several heads were deliberately mutilated in antiquity, faces bashed with stone hammers before being carefully buried. This wasn't erosion, but systematic destruction of royal portraits, possibly representing political overthrow or ritual killing of monuments. Around 900 BCE, San Lorenzo's monuments were systematically destroyed, then reverentially buried in long parallel lines. San Lorenzo reached its peak 1200 to 900 BCE, contemporary with Shang dynasty China and centuries before classical Greece. The site sits on a plateau, but this wasn't natural. The entire plateau was artificially reshaped using approximately 15 million cubic feet of fill, requiring millions of person-hours over generations. The urban core housed between 1,000 and 5,000 people, with total political influence extending to 13,000 to 20,000, making it one of the largest political entities in the world at the time. The site featured sophisticated hydraulic engineering. Carved basalt troughs fitted together, channeled water across the site. 3 separate systems brought water to elite areas, created decorative fountains, and drained excess water during rainy season. The precision of carving in hard basalt with perfectly smooth interior surfaces proves sophisticated understanding of hydraulic principles decades before Romans built their first aqueduct. After San Lorenzo's collapse, Venta became the capital from 900 to 400 BCE. Built on a swamp island, its location seems deliberately chosen for symbolic reasons, representing the interface between terrestrial and aquatic realms. Venta featured Mesoamerica's first pyramid, standing 110 feet tall with a 420-foot base diameter. The pyramid was built in coloured layers. Clay soils of different hues were deliberately alternated, creating a striped effect with no structural purpose, purely symbolic. The entire city was precisely laid out along a north-south axis oriented 8 degrees west of true north, an astronomical alignment maintained within 1 degree across 200-plus hectares. Offering 4 contained 16 jade and serpentine figurines arranged in a deliberate scene, then buried to never be seen again. Offering 3 consisted of over 1,000 serpentine blocks arranged in a jaguar face mosaic, covered with coloured clays, then immediately buried. These weren't flaws, but messages to underworld deities, demonstrating religious motivations central to the Olmec worldview. The Olmec homeland receives over 80 inches of annual rainfall, creating hot, humid swampland. Recent studies discovered extensive raised field systems. Artificial platforms built above flood levels created elevated planting surfaces, while excavated areas became canals providing water, fish, and transportation. This system covered thousands of hectares and could produce multiple crops annually. Primary crops included maize, beans, squash, manioc, and sunflowers. The aquatic environment provided abundant protein: fish, turtles, shellfish, crocodiles, and waterbirds. Isotopic analysis shows significant aquatic protein consumption. Chemical analysis of pottery from San Lorenzo found theobromine residues, proving the Olmecs consumed cacao beverages 1,000 years earlier than previously thought, making them history's first chocolate lovers. The Olmecs practiced forest management, selectively clearing trees while favouring useful species like cacao, avocado, and breadnut, creating domesticated forests that looked wild but were carefully managed orchards. The Gulf Coast wasn't conquered through agriculture but integrated into a sophisticated system combining farming, foraging, fishing, and forest management. Green jade represented everything sacred: water, maize plants, life force, fertility, royal power, and divine connection. The finest jade sources lay over 400 miles away in Guatemala's Motagua Valley. Working jade requires harder materials and patience. The Olmecs used string saws with quartz sand as abrasive, slowly grinding through jade over weeks or months. Drilling holes required hollow bamboo tubes with quartz sand, grinding out cylindrical cores. The Kunz axe, an 11-inch ceremonial celt carved from brilliant blue-green jadeite with a were-jaguar face, shows microscopic detail carved into one of Earth's hardest stones. Offering 4 at Venta contained over 1,000 pounds of jade and serpentine, representing years of mining, transport, and carving, then buried forever. Jade's value wasn't economic, but spiritual capital. Jade celts were buried as offerings with engraved designs invisible once buried, suggesting they were messages meant for supernatural rather than human audiences. The most common Olmec motif combines human and jaguar features in beings with snarling mouths, exposed fangs, flaming eyebrows, cleft heads, almond-shaped eyes, and sometimes serpent, eagle, or caiman features. Rulers claimed jaguar ancestry, wore jaguar pelts, and perhaps believed they transformed into jaguars during shamanic trances. Archaeological evidence shows jaguars were captured alive, kept near ceremonial centres, sacrificed in rituals, and consumed. The were-jaguar motif persisted throughout Mesoamerican civilization for 2,500 years. The Cascajal block, discovered in 1999, shows 62 distinct symbols arranged in horizontal rows on serpentine dating to approximately 900 BCE. This makes it potentially the oldest writing in the Americas, predating Maya scripts by centuries. Though its authenticity remains debated due to lack of excavation context, most specialists lean toward authenticity. The 2002 San Andres discovery of a roller stamp and greenstone plaque bearing clear glyphs, dated to 650 BC through stratigraphic context, is less controversial. The roller stamp shows a bird with speech scrolls, indicating speaking or singing. The plaque shows what appears to be a name glyph. Analysis concluded clear continuity. Olmec symbols evolved into later scripts. The Tuxtla Statuette bears a long count calendar date equivalent to 162 CE, but was carved in Olmec style, proving understanding of positional notation and calendrical mathematics. Olmec writing likely served limited purposes, recording ruler names, calendar dates, and basic historical events. Unlike Maya hieroglyphics, which recorded history and poetry, Olmec writing seems more restricted, but it pioneered conventions like speech scrolls, name glyphs, and bar and dot numbers used throughout Mesoamerican history. The Mesoamerican ballgame originated with the Olmecs by at least 1400 BCE, making it one of the world's oldest organised sports predating Greek Olympics. The game was played with a solid rubber ball weighing 3 to 8 pounds, made by combining latex sap with morning glory vine juice, creating vulcanization 3,000 years before Charles Goodyear's patent. Players couldn't use hands or feet, only hips, thighs, chest and foreheads. Protective padding was necessary for hitting 6-pound rubber balls at high speed. The earliest courts were simple cleared areas, but by 900 BCE, formal eye-shaped courts with sloped walls appeared. This wasn't just sport, but cosmic drama. The ball represented the sun moving through sky and underworld. Games ended with sacrifice. Participants were decapitated, their blood ensuring cosmic continuity, agricultural fertility, and rainfall. The ball game was sacred ritual, political theatre, warfare substitute, and divinatory practice combined. Ball games could settle disputes, determine succession rights, or precede military campaigns. Bar and dot numerical notation appears in Olmec contexts by 600 BCE, bars representing 5, dots representing 1. The Olmecs likely invented this system earlier. The 260-day ritual calendar almost certainly originated with Olmecs, combining 13 numbers with 20-day names, creating 260 unique designations. Each day had supernatural significance determining personality, fate, and appropriate occupations. Why 260 days? Theories include human gestation approximation, solar zenith passage timing, Venus synodic period relationships, or agricultural cycle marking in tropical lowlands. The calendar integrated with the 365-day solar calendar to create the calendar round, a 52-year cycle when both calendars return to the same starting position. The long count calendar required sophisticated mathematical understanding, including positional notation and zero concept, both probably Olmec inventions perfected by later Maya. The 260-day calendar's persistence across all Mesoamerican civilizations proves its effectiveness and Olmec cultural influence. Highland Maya communities in Guatemala still use it today, making it one of humanity's longest surviving timekeeping systems, outlasting Roman, Egyptian, and Mesopotamian calendars. Olmec influence appears across 1,000 miles from central Mexico to El Salvador. This wasn't empire, but trade networks based on prestige goods, religious ideology, and political alliances. Neutron activation analysis identifies obsidian sources. Obsidian came from at least 5 different sources hundreds of miles away, proving extensive trade networks. Jade came from Guatemala 400 miles away. Iron ore mirrors came from Oaxaca 200 miles away. Pacific and Caribbean shells appear at inland sites. Olmec-style artifacts appear at distant sites. Chalcatzingo, 400 miles from Venta, features relief carvings depicting were-jaguars and rain symbols in pure Olmec style. Teopantacuanetlan features Olmec-style sculptures. Tuxtla Cave contains polychrome murals showing Olmec-style figures painted 1.5 kilometers deep in the cave system. Stingray spines found in elite burials hundreds of miles from ocean were ritual implements for piercing tongues and ears in bloodletting ceremonies. Blood was the ultimate offering to gods, precious liquid connecting humans to divine powers. Unlike later Aztec captive sacrifice, bloodletting involved elites harming themselves, demonstrating courage and piety. The pain opened portways to spiritual visions, allowing communication with ancestors and gods. This practice continued throughout Mesoamerican history for 2,000 years after the Olmecs, but they pioneered it, establishing that elite blood had cosmic significance, that personal suffering maintained universal order, and that humans could communicate with gods through deliberate physical trauma. Combined with sensory deprivation and possibly psychoactive substances, bloodletting created profound religious experiences where participants believed they met gods through blood-induced visions. Olmec society was clearly stratified. Elite burials at Venta contained jade masks, hundreds of jade beads, elaborate pottery, stingray spines, and sacrificed individuals killed to accompany the deceased into the afterlife. The Señora de las Limas shows a youth holding a limp were-jaguar baby. The statue is famous for its incised representations of Olmec supernaturals. It is the largest known greenstone sculpture. Commoner burials contained minimal grave goods, simple pottery, basic tools, perhaps shell beads. Skeletal analysis shows dietary differences. Elite skeletons show high-protein diets and good childhood health. Commoner skeletons show nutritional stress indicators, shorter stature, and heavy physical labor evidence. At San Lorenzo, elite residential compounds had plastered floors, elaborate drainage, carved monuments, and imported prestige goods. Commoner areas had packed earth floors, simpler architecture, and locally made utilitarian items. The ruling class claimed descent from divine ancestors, controlled trade in prestige goods and monopolized religious knowledge. Specialized craft production areas show potters, sculptors, jade carvers, and textile producers had intermediate status. The fundamental question remains, were Olmecs a true state or a complex chiefdom? Arguments for statehood include colossal head portraits suggesting individual rulers, massive construction projects requiring centralized labor, long-distance trade control, settlement hierarchy, and specialized craft production. Richard Deal argues Olmec polities were true states comparable to early Egyptian kingdoms. Arguments for chiefdom include limited evidence for bureaucratic administration, no clear standing armies, political authority possibly based on personal charisma rather than institutionalized power, relatively small territories, and lack of urban density. Anne Cyphers argues they were complex chiefdoms where leaders organized labor through personal authority and religious legitimacy. Some scholars propose hybrid models of incipient states transitioning from chiefdoms. San Lorenzo may have been a chiefdom, while Venta developed more state-like features. Settlement patterns show variability suggesting different regions had different political organizations, perhaps multiple independent polities rather than a single Olmec state. Olmec is an Aztec word meaning rubber people, applied centuries later. Their actual name is unknown. Analysis of loanwords suggests Mixi-Zaquean language family origins. Evidence includes the Isthmian script representing Zaquean language and geographic distribution coinciding with the Olmec heartland. DNA analysis shows genetic continuity, meaning modern Mixi, Zoko, and Gulf Coast populations are biological descendants. The African features interpretation of colossal heads has been thoroughly debunked. The heads show typical Gulf Coast features common in humid tropical populations worldwide. Around 900 BCE, dozens of San Lorenzo monuments were systematically mutilated with faces smashed and thrones defaced, then carefully buried in parallel lines. The sophisticated drainage system was dismantled, yet residential areas continued occupation without evidence of general destruction. The revolution theory suggests commoners revolted, destroying elite symbols. The conquest theory proposes external enemies ritually terminated the site's power. The ritual termination theory suggests leaders performed deliberate termination rituals as the site declined due to environmental changes or resource depletion, explaining the careful ritualized nature of destruction. The internal political change theory suggests competing factions destroyed rivals' monuments. The truth likely combines elements. Environmental stress caused resource scarcity, leading to political instability and ritual termination during gradual abandonment. Archaeologists traditionally called Olmecs Mesoamerica's mother culture, the originating civilization for all later cultures. However, recent discoveries complicate this. The Paso de la Armada Balcourt predates classic Olmec centers. Maya culture used cacao very early, contemporary with San Lorenzo. Multiple regions developed complexity simultaneously with platform mounds, specialized crafts, and long-distance trade. The sister cultures model proposed by Flannery and Marcus argues multiple Mesoamerican regions developed complexity through mutual interaction. Olmecs were most visible but didn't single-handedly create Mesoamerican civilization. Instead, civilization emerged from interactions among multiple developing societies. Most archaeologists now favor a middle position. Olmecs were first among equals, achieving complexity slightly earlier, pioneering innovations like colossal sculpture and jade working, but existing within a network of interacting societies rather than in isolation. This Venta sculpture depicts someone dramatically different from typical Olmec figures, with a tall, pointed conical cap, different facial features, distinctive clothing, and striding posture. The figure clearly depicts someone from elsewhere. Theories include a foreign ambassador or trader from distant regions, a mythological figure or deity incorporated through cultural contact, an Olmec person in foreign dress commemorating their journeys, or possibly a captive or conquered ruler. Venta's three massive mosaic pavements used approximately 1,000 serpentine blocks weighing 50 tons arranged in stylized faces or masks, possibly were-jaguars or earth deities. After painstaking construction by skilled craftspeople working for weeks or months, each was covered with coloured clays and buried beneath platform fill, created specifically to never be seen by human eyes again. The underworld communication theory suggests the mosaics were offerings to underworld deities. In Mesoamerican cosmology, the underworld lay beneath the earth, so burying sacred objects placed them in divine realms. The sacred geography theory proposes the mosaics mapped cosmological spaces, representing the universe's structure. The foundation offerings theory suggests they sanctified the sites like modern cornerstone ceremonies. The competition theory proposes leaders competed in displays of devotion measurable by costliness rather than visibility. The mosaics remain one of archaeology's most beautiful mysteries, exquisite artworks created for an audience of gods rather than humans. Geomagnetic surveys detected unusual concentrations of magnetite and ilmenite in ceremonial areas. Olmecs clearly collected magnetite, polished it into mirrors, and might have noticed magnetite's attractive properties. The concentration seemed deliberately placed in ceremonial areas rather than randomly distributed. The compass theory proposes Olmecs discovered magnetic compasses millennia before the Chinese magnetite naturally aligns with Earth's magnetic field. Suspend a fragment on a string, and it points north-south. Supporting evidence includes Venta's 8-degree west alignment matching magnetic north and the precision of astronomical alignments suggesting sophisticated surveying tools. Counter-arguments include no direct evidence of compasses, no magnetite needles, and no descriptions of magnetic navigation. The alignments could be achieved through astronomical observation without compasses. This remains speculative but intriguing evidence of remarkable scientific observation. Discovered in 1902, this small jade figurine depicts classic Olmec style with duck-billed face, elaborate headdress, and characteristic artistic conventions. But the statuette bears a long-count calendar date, placing it over 5 centuries after Olmec civilization collapsed. This creates an impossible chronology. The late carving theory suggests artisans centuries after Olmec collapse copied old styles. The heirloom inscription theory proposes the statuette was carved during the Olmec period, kept as precious heirloom for hundreds of years, then inscribed much later to commemorate some event. The deliberate mystery theory proposes creating chronologically impossible objects was intentional, demonstrating control over time and claiming continuity with ancestral powers. The statuette's provenance is well documented since 1902, and modern scientific analysis shows ancient tool marks in genuine antiquity. It defies easy explanation, either evidence of extraordinary cultural continuity or an archaeological anomaly we don't yet understand. In 1987, archaeological investigation revealed El Manatee, a waterlogged spring deposit dating 1600 to 1200 BCE. Contemporary with San Lorenzo's peak, the oxygen-free conditions preserved wooden busts carved from tree trunks, rubber balls some nearly 20 pounds, jade axes, obsidian blades, and at least 42 infant skeletons ranging from late-term fetuses to approximately 18 months old. The infants were sacrificed to aquatic and underworld deities associated with springs. Water sources were sacred throughout Mesoamerica, and springs represented portals to supernatural realms. Child sacrifice appears in later Mesoamerican contexts, and the tradition might trace to Olmec origins. Another theory proposes El Manatee was a sacred cemetery for infants who died naturally, though the expensive jade and rubber offerings suggest something beyond routine burial. The Olmecs clearly practiced child sacrifice as part of their religious system. El Manatee remains partially excavated, preserved for future archaeology with better preservation techniques.